I will pass over to Paul and give him some permissions to share his screen. And everyone's okay, we'll make a start. So Paul,
Yeah,
over to you.
fantastic. Okay, let's go for it. Everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Amazing. For those who weren't here last time, my name is Paul Lyngby-Trow and I'm head of UX design and research for the Donata Travel Group. So look after a number of travel websites, probably 7 or 8, and they're kind of based around the country. So last time I did a bit of a presentation on research, some of the great research we've been doing, did lots of discovery research, and I think I had a slide on design sprints. And we said, oh yeah, let's talk about design sprints next time. So I've pulled something together just to talk about how we've used design sprints at Donata Travel Group. I've got some examples there, some work that we've done, and also some tips that I've learned along the way. So I think it was about 2017 or something like that. I think one of us got the sprint book, Jake Natt's sprint book, who's kind of ex-Google, who kind of, he sold this idea, this framework. It had become really popular. I think 3 or 4 of us bought this book and we were like pretty smitten with it. We thought it was a great idea. Let's do some experimental design sprints at Donata. And for those that haven't had that much information about it, I'll just read out what it kind of says, what a design sprint is. So it's a time-constrained 5-phase process that uses design thinking with the aim of reducing the risk when bringing a new product, service, or feature to the market. And reducing the risk was really interesting because actually before we started doing design sprints, we would just be, doing mock-ups, doing designs, maybe a little bit of guerrilla testing, but we didn't really have a proper process in place. So it was actually nice having this framework, and also the fact that you're working as a cross-functional team. So not just designers working in silos, you're bringing in other key members of development teams, marketing teams. We've had commercial. So we've got all these great people with different backgrounds inputting their ideas. And those kind of key areas, the 5 phases. First of all, it's understanding, trying to understand what is it you're trying to do? What's this new product? How are you going to go about, deciding what you're doing with that? That takes you through to sketching. So it's kind of sketching either on your own or working in groups, coming up with loads of different ideas. There's loads of different techniques for that. At a certain point, you've got to decide what you're doing, and what we usually do is have maybe a couple of different ideas that we want to go off and test. We'll prototype those up in Protopie, which is our prototyping tool of choice, and then we'll go and test those with users.
Can I just jump in here, Paul, and say that you've got obviously a triple diamond there, which is interesting to see. The understanding phase is so utterly fundamental to what we do. Even after 20 years in the industry and starting a new job, I've kind of rocked up and I'm trying to get involved with it. And I realised that there's been a lot of misunderstanding on projects, and whereas I'm sort of like parachuted in 80% down the journey and trying to piece together 80% of ideas and approaches and theories to try and create a product in the last 20% is very, very hard. Understanding something is fundamentally important, and I would argue that is why out of the 3 stages there, simple understanding takes 1/3 of it.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
We might not think of that as designers, because we want to get into the sketching and the deciding, the prototyping and the UI. We want to get all the fun stuff. Understanding is so important, because you can't basically design anything unless you understand what you're designing for. It's as simple as that. And that's a really key thing. That's something I wouldn't have jumped on, but this week, even with my experience, I've been absolutely wrestling with at my work. Understand exactly what the hell I'm supposed to be doing. It's a real struggle. If I understood what I would, if the building blocks are in place for me to understand what I was doing, I could have done what I've done in 2 days, but it's taken me 2 weeks, basically. As simple as that.
Wow. Yeah. sound good.
Yeah, so they just wanted to jump in there and say that's,
Yeah,
my interpretation would be that's why understanding is such a big thing. Never be afraid to ask questions, never be afraid to pick things apart and find out what people are thinking, because various stakeholders in a project would never have thought about things from a user perspective. They'd have thought about sales, they'd have thought about marketing, they'd have thought about all sorts of things, but never what a user wants. And that's what our job is. So carry on, mate. Sorry to jump in, but
that's all right. I think if anyone wants to jump in along the way, that's fine. I'm happy to do that. I think what's really interesting about this framework is it is quite flexible. You've got the 5-day design sprint, the 3-day, even the 1 day, which we've tried before. That was just too crazy. It's just too much. What we try and do at Donata is combine days 1 and 2 mostly. Because it's always good to kind of have a think about some of those ideas that you've created and come back and actually decide the next morning because you're pretty tired. And the prototyping and validating usually happens a little bit later on. But you can see on this 5-day plan here, some of the questions you're asking, who are the users, what are their needs, what is the context? You look at a lot of competitors' reviews, formulating a bit of a strategy. I'll talk about lightning talks in a minute, where you get experts at your company from various departments talking about what they expect from this product, and then the ideation bit is where you're making notes as people are talking and not noting down ideas, already starting to formulate ideas in your mind, and obviously there'll be loads of ideas if there's like a group of 6 or 7 of you, so you've got to work out between you which of those ideas you're going to do. So yeah, this is mostly our schedule for the first day. So you've got, like I said before, we've got the welcome introduction, lightning talks, how might we is a way of noting down your ideas, which I'll show you in a minute. Always time for lunch. You need to get lunch in there because it's actually very draining, this experience. You're away from your desks, you're actually thinking all day. It really tires you out. We then try and do a bit of user journey mapping in the afternoon. We combine and consolidate some of those ideas together, start to form some themes, and then you'll go through to the solution sketching. So understanding the sprint challenge. This is how we always start off with the sprint challenge. Like, what are you here to do? And I think the key to this is keep it really simple. From a kind of travel perspective, recent ones were, how can we create an inspirational landing page for our particular customer base, which would be couples and family holiday bookers. The platform could be website, but you could also be looking at a native app, and the time frame obviously is how long you spend on that. Now, sometimes this has already been defined before the sprint. We have like a pre-design sprint, which we call an insight sprint, if it's going to be quite a complicated one, just to make sure we've got enough information that's going to feed into the design sprint. So yeah, lots of sprints. And then before I get into the lightning talks, everyone gets like a pile of post-it notes. And as people are talking about their various areas, the idea is for you to write down any ideas that you have from that talk that you can use later to help with the ideation process. It's a very particular way you need to kind of write down your idea. It needs to be one idea per post-it. And you can see you've got 3 different examples here. It needs to be quite kind of specific on what you want to do. Make people happy, too broad. Make the buy button blue, too narrow. Use location to show relevant results. You can kind of get your head around that. So it actually takes a while to get used to writing in this way. So we practice quite a bit, but you get there in the end. So let's get to the lightning talks. This is actually a really interesting part of this. Is usually in the morning session, so you'll get various members of the business. You might get the MD talking about if it's a landing page, for example, what he expects from that landing page, or marketing or SEO. So the director of SEO will say, well, I actually need this landing page to push the page up the Google rankings and that sort of thing. You've got a few examples there. What where do you want the product to be in the next year? What are the primary challenges we need to overcome? What's the business opportunity here? And as these people are talking, you're writing down ideas. Stuff will just start appearing in your head. We've also, for the bigger design sprints, we've mostly done some discovery user research. So I talked about last week, I talked about some customer workshops when we're investigating what a deal is, for example, and we might have some really interesting insight from that. And so you'll get the user researchers come in and present that to the team, in quite a good way. And then also, it's really good to actually look at your existing product. So if it's a redesign of a landing page, like what's wrong with the current version? Look at the stats there. Why is it failing? What's the reason we're moving to a new design? You might have done a bit of analysis yourself, a bit of an audit of how that looks. And also, one of the usually the researchers or designers has done some competitor teardown. So had a look at who are the direct competitors of I'm using travel here, but what are they doing that's similar to this product? Are there any ideas we could magpie, or are they doing some things that are really wrong that we need to steer clear? So all of this insight is coming in, and you're making notes as you go. And then after the lightning talk's finished, you've got a pile of post-it notes with loads of ideas. And the next part is really to have a think about how we can map those ideas to a particular journey. So this journey is a pre-booking journey, I think it was for net flights. So kind of looking at the key stages of that journey. So everyone puts their ideas into these different buckets. This is another example which we were doing. We did a deals service for Donata Travel. So it was looking at personalization for deals and looking at the different journeys customers would come to the deals app. So you could be a first-time user, returning user, signed-in user, and mapping all your ideas to those different areas. So after everyone's done that, you've got a lot of post-its on the wall. You've got a lot of duplication there. A lot of people are going to have the same sort of idea. So this is when we start doing affinity mapping and actually consolidating some of those ideas. You can see inspiration is one of the ideas here. This was for one of the landing pages. So starting to move all of the different post-its into that area. And once you've done that, you've got maybe 4, 5, 6 kind of key areas that you're going to use as themes, and you get the opportunity to vote on your favorite area. So you get 3 dots each, or stars, I think we're using down the one at the bottom. Stakeholders get 4. And the idea is anything that really kind of catches your eye that you think, oh, that's going to be a great part to this page or a great feature of this page, you're going to stick your dot on there. And eventually, when everyone's done that, you can see that actually the slide there in the bottom right corner, those are kind of the key areas for a landing page. So it obviously needs to have inspiration. Why do you want to go to this destination? That was really popular. I think there was a lot about bringing video content onto that page. That got loads of vote because it was a very static page before that. How can we inspire people to go into that page? So after that, you've got all these great ideas have been discussed. You've gone through all of these different activities, and between you have to start thinking about how you're going to turn this into more of a design page. The next part of this is going away and doing some sketching. But before you actually start doing this, we call it solution sketching. You have to think about which areas of this page or feature you want to focus on. Is it a particular user you want to look at? Is it a particular key pain point that you want to look at? So this is a time when you might have a little break actually at this point, and everyone kind of goes away and has a little rest before they start the sketching part of the session. So after that final review, you get through to what we call solution sketching. So you can do this on your own, or we've tried it with groups as well. And if you're looking at maybe multiple pages, for example, destination pages, we have like different levels of destinations, country, province, and location. You might split off into little mini groups looking at different parts of different pages, and that really helps. So yeah, you go away, you probably spend, I would say, like about an hour going off and actually doing those sketches. You might look at multiple states, you might sketch out interactions, all sorts of things. And I think what's really interesting about this is you don't need to be a brilliant illustrator or artist. It's about getting your ideas on page. I'm not a great illustrator or artist. My drawing is terrible, but and some people have just put just lots of text, like almost kind of writing the idea. As long as you can get your idea down, and then you'll get the opportunity to kind of present back that idea.
I think it's worth interjecting here. Is like I often say to people, this is where your thought process comes in. This is where showing how you think, how you stitch things together, how you come up with an idea and present it to a group is important. Some people I've known are phenomenal sketches, and they can come up. I'm sure Paul's met them as well, and they can come up with something. And they get a flipping graph pen and they put something together, and you just sit there going, "Oh God!" And all you've got is a couple of rubbish speech bubbles and some copy. But that is exactly, actually, to be fair, that's a good example where a good UX writer can be useful, because if you can orate your ideas in simple text, as we're seeing there, even on the purple version and the blue version as well, that's perfectly good at this stage. You don't have to be the best drawer in the world. If someone next to you is scribbling some things and they look like they're some sort of Picasso, don't let that bother you, because it might look wonderful, but it might not actually deliver the information it's needed to deliver. And that's a key thing to remember. It's just about getting information down. That's why these sprints are fantastic, because you can get project owners, you can get business analysts, you can get all sorts of people, technical team leads to come in who aren't good at drawing, but they understand how things need to be delivered, and to give them an opportunity to deliver them in this way is an invaluable opportunity. And that's really important to mention.
I think that's a really interesting point there, actually, because sometimes we'll team people up. You might have a designer with a BA or a designer with a developer, and actually getting those two to work together on a sketch is really interesting, because you're getting totally different ideas combining there. So yeah, after you've presented your sketches, we usually put them on the wall, and you do some dot voting again, and we use dots or stars here. And what you usually find is you've got the kind of favorite features or ideas or products, and we'll kind of consolidate those features and ideas. You can see the post-its there. Actually, we were looking at the information architecture of a landing page. So these were like the key areas that were voted on. So even at this point, we're starting to construct that page, but just in post-its. You mentioned remote earlier. I've only done one remote design sprint, actually, and it was when COVID first kicked in. I used Miro, and it was a destination page design sprint for Travel Republic. It actually worked out all right. I think I had 15 people dialing in from all around London. It took a lot of organising. I had to do some pre-training on Miro to get them to understand, how to add post-its and things like that. But actually it worked out all right, because you can create your areas. You can give all the participants their own little area, which they can add their own post-its, which is really cool. And then I created, you can just see that on the right there, just a little area for the SEO kind of KPIs, marketing KPIs, commercial. So I had all those nicely laid out. How might we clusters in the middle, and then the kind of the red and the blue, I've started to think about the different content that people want. So the red was the SEO content for that page, and the blue is more the types of product. I quite enjoyed the sessions, and we got people to do the solution sketching and uploaded, and we actually viewed it in Miro. So it was good. It was really good.
Out of interest, how much did you prepare with the page we're looking at now? How much did you prepare the framework for this page before you went into the sprint?
I had the grey bars laid out, so content, the SEO, marketing, commercial, and then off screen I had like just some little areas for each of the participants where they could just add their post-its. the areas like who's in supplies and voting, that's already part of the template. What's great about Miro is you get loads of really interesting templates already there for you.
So is Miro geared up to actually bespokely deal with design sprints?
I think it's actually got a design sprint template. I was watching a webinar probably about 6 weeks ago, and it's actually got a dedicated design sprint template now. Yeah, they've got loads of great templates actually.
Yeah, brilliant.
It's really come on. I know there's people use Mural as well, but I don't know that so well.
Yeah, we I think at Talk again, I wasn't involved in it, but they used Mural, and apparently it worked very well. I recommended Miro because as a group, the Game Changers, we've used Miro a few times just to document stuff, but we haven't used it in a sort of a session, I suppose, like a design sprint would dictate. No, it's good to see that Miro's got that kind of capability. And I suppose a lot of programs are going to have this now because design sprint's getting such a popular traction now.
Yeah.
Any reasonable platform worth its own salt is going to have some sort of templates geared towards it.
Yeah, I think Envision I don't know if it's been released yet, but they're actually doing a bit of a Miro add-on to Envision as part of that. I'm not sure if it's been released yet. I've definitely seen a preview of it. Yeah, because I think everyone's really now in like a COVID world, everyone's doing a lot of these kind of remote anyway, so it makes sense to invest in doing this.
100%.
So sprint activities day 2. Decide. So, like I said, you might already have some ideas which directions you're going to, but it's always good to go back the next day just with a fresh pair of eyes and a fresh head, just to kind of have a think about those concepts. And we usually, most of the time, we have 2 concepts that we want to go off and actually prototype up. So we might do some quick flows, just quickly sketch those out. For something a bit more complicated, we might go and do more of a detailed user journey like this. But we don't always do this, but I think this was for hotel journey. It was quite complicated, so we actually thought it would help us. I've thrown the design principles in there because we have a set of design principles as the Donata UX team that we follow, and I think it's always good to kind of remind people what those are and make sure when we come to this prototyping design stage that you should be adhering to those. So that's why I've put that in there. And then in terms of prototyping, like I say, we've used Protopie. So this was for the deals experience for Donata Travel. So looking at, I suppose the Donata Travel customers have got a little bit more money, so they're actually looking for not like a cheap deal, but something that's more with added value. So you might get like a free transfer or free cruise or something like that added to it. So we're kind of exploring that. And these animations here are just showing we're testing this idea that you could view member prices if you use that toggle. And the idea was to try and get people to sign up to this members club, and actually tested really well. Everyone liked the idea of a membership scheme. And then testing. So try and test every couple of weeks at Donata Travel. It's been tricky with COVID, but prior to that, we used to set up an observation room where we print all the designs out on a whiteboard, invite people to come and view a streamed session. And we give them pizza. If it's a late night, they can have a beer as well. And any insights they actually see, they actually can post themselves, and then we consolidate all of those.
What platforms do you use for testing? Do you use like usertesting.com, or do you use?
We don't. We just do it internally.
Oh.
We don't do remote. Actually, the bottom image on the right is actually from usertesting.com. We were trialing them, and we were looking at 3 different versions of search and doing a speed test, but we haven't been doing that. Recently, the guys have been actually talking to marketing and the social teams, and we've been getting a list of brand loyalists that are happy to come and do testing for us. So that's a slightly cheaper way of doing it. But I think eventually we probably will have to go and use one of those services like usertesting.com or user Zoom as so many out there, because it is quite time consuming going out there and trying and get these people yourself. So actually, they'll go and do that service for you.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's one thing I've noticed, again, starting to move towards a company like TalkTalk, who place a lot of emphasis on user testing. They use usertesting.com, and they can, turn around a test in a matter of hours.
Yeah,
incredible, really.
it's so quick.
And you can literally woe to go. It's less than 2 days. And the testing itself obviously takes a few hours, but you've got to prep it, present it, get the results, report back, and then talk about it. That obviously takes time, but yeah, the testing itself is a couple of hours. And normally, using other companies, they go out and they find people, and it can take many days to plan. It's a pain in the backside.
Yeah.
Something like this is incredible, actually, and that's something I'm getting used to, is that you can just get some prototypes together, fire it off user testing, and get some results back inside a day. It's quite incredible.
That's really quick, actually. Yeah, I think we'll be going in that direction, definitely. This is just kind of the final stages. So obviously, after we've done user testing, we might do a couple of rounds of user testing, depending on what we find. Usually do black and white wireframes initially, but then we might do a hi-fi color version as a second test if we find loads of bugs. Otherwise, we'll just move to kind of final designs and getting those finalized.
So why would you use black and white wireframes initially as opposed to color ones?
That's because people just get a little bit transfixed with color, and we find it can swing the test. So you might have a color that someone doesn't like, or an image that someone doesn't like, and they'll concentrate on it, and that I don't know, they just change the focus. They're not focusing on the click through or the actual journey itself. So we've always gone for, I would say they're quite high quality black and whites, but I keep color out as long as possible.
So it's more focused on functionality rather than kind of aesthetic.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. And then we've got a design system for most of these brands, so we kind of add the color right at the end when we're happy with it, and the customers are happy, and the stakeholders are happy with it. And I've just thrown in a few examples here. So that was the final Donata travel deals. It was all about. What was interesting about this was Travel Republic was all about cheap holidays. They wanted the cheapest price. They didn't care about the kind of where they were going. It was all about getting the cheap hotel. Whereas the Donata customers, it's all about selling that experience, that destination. So we spent a lot of time sourcing, beautiful images like that turtle there, or the mountains of Sri Lanka there. So Travel Bag, I showed this last week actually, but that's just on mobile. And Travel Republic, which is more about kind of European holidays. Okay, top 5 learnings. I'm nearly at the end, guys. Planning is key to design sprint. Oh my gosh. Booking that, getting the meeting room booked. We've had a few clashes before, making sure that's booked well in advance. I do a bit of it. I do a script. Who do I want to invite? Make sure that you're inviting those key people well in advance, especially if it's a stakeholder like an MD. They're going to be so busy, so we need to make sure that and also have a backup if they can't make it. Who's the next person that could represent them? So I definitely do that list, and then that's kind of communication bit with the little plasticine man there. Go and have a look at the room. Make sure you've got all of the equipment, the post-its, the clock, and make sure you've got a lot of Haribo. You're going to need it.
That's why I'm really unpopular, because I always try and get brain food and nuts and stuff.
Oh no, I try and do that as well. There's like a small fruit section that never gets.
One thing I've always found works is if you can get a ground floor room, that's good, because we can open a window and get fresh air. That's quite important.
Yeah.
And nowadays in these modern buildings, if you're on floor 4, you can't open a bloody window and it gets really stuffy. It's quite knackering, to be fair. But they are exhausting, design sprints. They are tiring. You're asking a lot of people to get out of their comfort zone, use their brains in a way they've never used them.
Yeah.
And, you know, Paul's quite right. And I always stress you have to organise, plan for every eventuality. And that picture on the bottom left there is perfect. You know, it's make sure you've got everything ready, everything you can think of. They are quite shattering. But yeah, fundamentally, I find fresh air is the best thing, because God, it can be quite shattering. Especially about 4:30, and everyone's like, oh, can we go out?
Yeah, come on.
A massive sugar crash, and it's like. I wasn't in it, but the other one the other day, I think on day 3, was it 3 when they were prototyping? I think it was, I can't remember now. And they ended up scrapping the idea at 6 o'clock in the evening and carried on till 8:30 designing it. And I was like, I couldn't have been doing
that. Seriously, wow.
That's
dedication.
That's dedication. I was really surprised, but I was like, I couldn't do that. But that's fine. Good on them. It looked great as well, what they did at the end as well.
I think be realistic with what you're taking on, and push back if they're trying to do too much. I think when we were first starting it, some product owners were trying to get us to do too much in the sprint. I think you have to just try and limit it as much as possible. You know, if you're looking at a search unit, just stick to the search unit, for example. Just look at one landing page really, or one part of the journey, because actually doing too much, it just gets overwhelming and you're not going to get the best out of it. Stick to timings, definitely. You know, you're not going to be exact, but you need to have a rough idea of how long things take. I mean, sometimes you do feel like, oh, this is going well, let's just do it a little bit longer, you know, get some really good ideas here. But certainly you've only got certain stakeholders for so long, sometimes not even for the whole day. You might have them, say, for the morning session. So you have to keep an eye on the clock quite a bit.
And for those that go back a second, Paul, so this clock here, for those that don't know, it's called a time timer. And it's something they talk about in the design sprint book, and it basically times time, if you can work that out. It's quite ethereal, but it gives you an idea of what you've got left. If you have a like a clock that is counting to 45, then it's not quite got the same. The idea is here, it's very clear as to, you start at 45 minutes and you can see exactly what you've got left at any one time. So when you're trying to keep accurate sprints and trying to keep accurate times and everyone on point, to have something like this as a visual reference is really, really key in a sprint and helps move things along, because as Paul's just referenced, there's a lot of processes, a lot of things that we go through. And just to have something as simple as a timer that everyone could see and go, crikey, we're halfway through, God, we've only got 5 minutes left, and it's really visual and really clear, that's quite an important point of view. And this time is quite a good, it's about, was it 15, 20 quid, something like you can buy it for? Yeah, it's quite a good acquisition for any group that's trying to do a successful sprint.
Regular breaks, refreshments. It's either pizza or sushi at Donata, so that's the choice. I think after so many design sprints with pizza, we want to do something else. But yeah, have that hour lunch, go off, get some fresh air, like you said, actually, Giles. You know, you need to have a little bit of a break and recharge your batteries. So splash out on something nice. And then I think this is really important. After the sprint, it's about keeping communication up, because I think everyone kind of finishes the sprint, they're knackered, but they're also on a high because they've achieved so much. But then there's this period where you might be doing a bit more prototyping and the testing bit. There's this kind of interim period. You just need to make sure that you're communicating with everyone that was part of the sprint just on what next steps is. And that's something maybe a couple of times we've got lost in other projects and we haven't done it as effectively as we should have. So I think it's really important to keep the momentum going. That's it, guys. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that. It was really insightful. I'm sure there are going to be some questions somewhere.
First one was the mushrooms. They're uncooked. You can't eat uncooked mushrooms. They're not good for you. I noticed that. I
wasn't expecting that.
I just write loads of things down. It's just a mess of questions now. So, that book looks really good as well. I think it's been mentioned on here before, the sprint book. So it might be worth picking a copy of that up.
Yeah, definitely, it's worth a read.
Giles mentioned the triple diamond, which is a new one because you had an extra. Oh, he's got it there, right? Yeah, okay. Everybody's got a copy apart from me.
Everyone's got a copy of that, mate. Just grab it. Again, it's what was it, 20 quid on Amazon or whatever. It's a valuable thing. If anything, it's a good learning resource.
Yeah. Also, the 15-minute journey. You did a journey map. It was 15 minutes long. Is that how long they would normally take? Because mine took about 2 weeks. It's really intricate. Obviously, it's like a quick kind of.
Are you talking about? I'm going to go back to the slide.
Wait, yeah.
You talking about this one, yeah?
Yeah, it's around there. Yeah, it said 15 minutes to do a journey map.
Maybe that was, yeah, I think that's probably. I don't know actually, because with the map you've already got the sections mapped out.
Yeah, okay.
You would have done that on a whiteboard or on some paper if you haven't got a whiteboard to hand. And then it's like, everyone, right, pick up your Post-its, go and add them to the relevant section. So you can actually do it quite quickly.
Okay.
And then I think after that is when you start consolidating, you start seeing duplications and try and simplify it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also validate. I see validate quite a bit. What's that actually mean in terms of a UX sprint or design sprint? It's always validated. Is that just a coherent order from the chaos?
I think obviously we want to validate it with customers. We want to validate it with ourselves as well. You know, I think throughout the day you're looking at what you've done as a group, and as you kind of go through, you're constantly validating it. And then also at the end when you're doing the sketch, again, there's like another validating part of that. So because you're getting through a lot of information, I think you need to kind of take, your time to go through this stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Paul, just a quick one. Is there a minimum amount of people that you would have in a design sprint to make it work?
They say the best is 6 or 7, actually. Yeah, I've done it probably I think the least I've done is 5. I've done the most of them is like 15 remote ones. So I think if it's too big, sometimes you're spending a lot of time managing people, trying to get them to kind of move on to the next thing. There might be little conversations going and stuff like that, so it's a bit hard to manage. But I would say between kind of 6 or 8 is the best I find, because then hopefully you've got a really nice mix of people, those cross-functional teams. So be it development, marketing, product, UX research. That's my kind of ideal group, I would say.
Yeah.
I think the thing as well with that is what you want to try and do is get 6 to 8 people who can be there for the week. When you start chopping and changing, and ideally you want people who are key decision makers. Of course you do, but those key decision makers have reached that position because they're very busy people, and of course they might spare you a day here and there, and that's gracious of them, but it doesn't help a group because it becomes very disjointed. So sometimes you can go, well, I did have like 8 or 9 people for the week, but this person can't be here for the whole week. So therefore we're going to have to keep it to the 7 that we know definitely can come in, and then we'll allow 1 person to drift in and out, which becomes sort of 8. So it's important to just, well, in my experience, obviously you have to have a good cross section, but try as best as you can to limit it to the amount of people that can dedicate their time realistically to the whole process. Otherwise it's going to be so disjointed. You could have 6 people one day, 5 people the next day, 8 people the next day, 9 people the next day, 2 people the final day, and it gets a bit of a mess. The first 3 days are the most important in my experience, because after then, that's when all the thinking's done. After then, you go into prototyping, user testing on the Thursday and the Friday. And that realistically, user testing, you need people to observe stuff, but you don't necessarily need the big decision makers in at that stage. And indeed, the prototyping, you really need the people that can do. It's nice to have the people who have been there to add insight to it, but hopefully if your documentation can back it all up, you're okay as well. But you really need to get 8 people, I would say, there for Monday to Wednesday at the very least, and them being the same people as well is a key thing I found. That's not easy, and that's why the design sprint is a Google, because it's all in house, isn't it? So try doing this for clients. It's an absolute I won't lie, it doesn't work. I tried it doesn't work. Simple as that. It just doesn't work. You have to really be in house to do something like this successfully, I find.
Cool.
Anyone else got anything to add? Juliana, Miles, Rob? No, you all good?
Paul, have you ever
Oh.
Well, we had about 10 of us all jump in there.
Yeah.
Paul, have you ever had I'll start again. Have you ever had a design sprint that's overran, in the sense of you've not been able to kind of get to a point in which you're happy with it on a certain day and you've had to let it overrun into a next day? Or
Yes. I'm trying to think what it was.
Was there any reasons why that was, or how did you overcome that?
I can't remember which we did. It might have been holiday extras. So it doesn't sound that exciting, but when you book your transfers or bags and that sort of thing, I just think it went over to another day. I think the reason was we didn't have people for the whole day. It was a particularly busy time, so we probably didn't have all of the heads we needed, and I think we were struggling with a couple of the features, I think. And so we just came back to it in the morning. And I think that's okay sometimes, if that happens, if you've hit a bit of a brick wall. But it hasn't happened a lot, I think. But I do remember that one in particular. That was a little bit tricky.
Oh, good stuff.
Paul, when you find things are running over, like I sort of mentioned earlier about a group of work last week, went until 8:30 at night. I wasn't part of that sprint, but I'd be like, man, I'm knackered now. I can't be asked to do this. I'm not thinking straight. Would you ever say, okay, let's draw a line under where we've got to, and we'll pick this up tomorrow? Would you ever advise doing that, or would you advise plowing through the midnight oil?
No, I don't. I draw a line, because I think after a certain point, you're a bit burnt out and you're not getting the best out of people. You need them to go home and see their families or whatever, and be have a good night's sleep, come back. I'm not a big fan of the burning the midnight oil.
I'm glad you said that, because when I was told that by my manager, I was like, God, am I the only person in the team that wouldn't have done that? Because I'd have gone, no, I'm not doing this.
I think if people want to do it, that's fine. But I think if you've done a whole day, we usually do like 10 till 5. If you're continuing after that, you're probably running on empty anyway. So you're not going to be getting the best out of yourself, I would say. I mean, unless you have to do it, is a really crazy deadline that you have to get this finished. But no, I've never really been in that situation. I wouldn't recommend it.
Oh, just a quick one from me. You mentioned about if you were doing, you're working on an existing page, or if you've already got insight within the company and analytics and things like that.
Yes.
Do you personally gather that yourself, or do you divvy it out to the team and say, can you prepare this for the sprint, please?
For insights, we've got an insights team that would go and, because I'm part of the product team, so they would go off and get that information for me. Obviously, I think I talked about an insight sprint where you might actually set up a meeting, say, 3 weeks before or something like that. This is the kind of information we're going to need for the design sprint. Can you go off and find it for me? So they'll go off and get the insight from GA or Mixpanel or something like that. Mm-hmm. You've got the research coming from the user research discovery. So yeah, they'll go off and they obviously need a bit of time to go and collate that information. So we need to give them quite a bit of time to do that. But yeah, we've got various, because it's quite a big company, various teams will go off and do that for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you find that the time timer takes some getting used to actually using? I'm just saying that because I saw the little picture of it earlier, and it's almost like a backwards clock. So I don't know. For me, the usability is Not quite there.
We don't, tell you the truth, I don't always use that. That's between me and you guys. I just thought it looked nice. I've got my own, I use my own phone to set like little alarms and things like that. So, so I'm kind of doing my own version of that, keeping an eye on time.
Once again, all the times we've spoken about stuff that we've talked about in terms of procedures and that sort of stuff, there are 1,001 textbooks and people out there on LinkedIn telling you how to do things. Paul showed a picture of that. I jumped on it, but the fact of the matter is, as he just said then, he doesn't really use it that much. So don't be afraid to dismiss things like this.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Find your own way, because otherwise you will drown in information and procedures, and you really need to find what resonates with you and take that and run with it, because otherwise you will be overwhelmed. I promise you that.
Do you find it any different actually using like a physical timer or some kind of clock that people can see though, as opposed to you just sort of having it on your phone and people sort of panicking going, oh my God, I've only got 5 minutes left?
I think that's why I started. That's another reason why I started just using that, because sometimes people were looking at it, the few times I did it, and maybe it's a little bit off-putting.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just want them to kind of continue with the flow and crack on with it, and then it's up to you as the facilitator to kind of control when they move on to the next task. So
it's a good point actually. There's a thing, I forget what it's called, the crazy eights, isn't it? There's a procedure in the crazy eights that you, when you obviously you're familiar with it, you divvy up your page into 8 sections and your sketches. If you have people, and that's a quick thing, that's a quick dynamic idea getting down really, and if you have a clock on that people can look at, I find that was quite distracting.
Yeah,
I kind of politely just say, okay, 5 minutes everyone, or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Just without just say, okay, great, then carry on drawing while they look at them and go, oh, look at the clock and go, oh my God, the clock's ticking, and then they get panicky. So it's, again, you feel your way along, you work it out, and we are in the business of putting messages to people to get the best outcome. That's what we do. So it makes sense that our very procedures mirror that process. So sometimes look at what's working, look at what's not working, and don't be afraid to dismiss what's not working, even though everyone on LinkedIn will say it's the best thing to do ever. Don't get worried about it.
I have a question, if there's an opening. Who determines what you're working on during the sprint project? Normally, is it someone in your team? Is it the PM? Is it a collaboration beforehand?
I've got a roadmap of projects that are coming up in the future. It's usually a 90-day roadmap. It depends on the brands, but you can kind of see that you might have a new destination page that needs looking at, in 2 months' time. So you need to be able to plan that well ahead. If you need to do any design research, user research up front, then get that booked in, and then get the design sprint booked in, because we know the development team is going to be ready at a certain point. So you need to work backwards.
That's a good question, Lacey. I mean, that sometimes a company can trial a design sprint on a particular service or an idea, and very often, if that design sprint works and some good stuff comes out of that, then people can get buy-in from project owners, project managers, whoever else are associated with the delivery of a service. And they can say, oh, great. And again, I hark back to what we're doing at Talk at the moment. And we had a successful design sprint before I joined. And they said, oh, and the next thing came along. And they were like, that's in our backlog. I think that will be a good idea for a design sprint. And sure enough, that happened. And, it was on a My Account page, I believe. And they've worked it out. So, businesses start to see the value of weekly sessions just to get stuff started, because otherwise in big businesses it gets lost because everyone wants particularly in the service industry, which is largely what this is involved in, because it's all service design. In service industry, there's a lot of components in one company that are a lot of departments that are trying to get their service out there ahead of the services, and so everyone's competing for market share within the same company, let alone the industry. Sometimes if you can just get some traction with one, then all of a sudden all of the departments start clamour for your abilities and facilities, really. So it's a good question then. Right, has anyone else got any questions? I mean, we're getting to 5 to the hour now.
Wow.
It's gone, Paul. It's gone quick.
It's gone quick this time,
So I
hasn't
have
it?
a good presentation and a well-received presentation. So has anyone else got any questions they would like to ask before we allow Paul to trundle off and get his mug of Horlicks before he goes to bed? Has anyone else got anything else at all? Or was everyone good? Oh, Lacey just lolled at that on the chat, but I'm surprised you know what Horlicks is, Lacey. It's a sell in America, I don't know. But
If anyone hasn't got any other questions, just drop me a line on LinkedIn and I can try and answer those for you, no problem.
as ever, it's always a perfect segue to do that. So if anyone would like to ask Paul any questions, as he said, give him a nudge on LinkedIn and he'll be happy to answer them. But if no one's got anything to say, then we'll let Paul go and we'll have a quick wash up and we can just leave it there. Again, I've recorded this. I have got to update a few of them actually onto the channel, but this is recorded and I will update it as soon as I basically get my ass into gear. So once again, Paul, I would like to thank you very much for your time. It was a good, actually, it was really good feedback from your last presentation, and the group were very happy to know that you were going to present today.
Oh, that's nice.
As I said before, one of the nice guys of the industry, and we'd always like to have you back again.
Okay, if I could think of another subject, then definitely, yes. I'd be up for it.
Very good, very good. So we'll let you go, and we'll speak to you hopefully no, I don't know, a few weeks, few months, whatever time. And anyone wants to get in touch with you on LinkedIn, everyone please feel free to do so.
Yeah, definitely. Really
Thanks,
nice meeting you all.
Thank you.
Take it easy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye-bye. Wonderful. That's that. So here we all are again. Everyone enjoy that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
Great. Are there any questions anyone has got that probably weren't addressed or dealt with during that presentation? Because I can always answer a couple. I'm not as well versed in design sprints as Paul, but I can answer a couple if we need to.
How often are you doing them, Giles? And your work?
Well, bear in mind I've only been there 4 weeks. It seems we do them we did one a couple of months ago that was really met really well and I think as we established our UX department, Lizzie, the girl who heads the department, said like, let's do this, and she's got some very sort of North Star procedures she wants to adhere to, being the double diamond and design sprints, and it worked really well, and it got some really good traction, and so they've just done one recently as well again. So I'd say at the moment, to answer your question, every couple of months, every time a new product or a new area of the company comes up that needs some proper look at, they'll go, yeah, let's this looks like it's right for a design sprint, and they'll run through it, so it seems to have gone really well. So yeah, I'd say every couple of months at the moment. But again, we are in a position where we are in-house. So I've worked 20 years agency side, and you know, design sprints are a relatively new thing, but they're very hard to get right agency side, because it's very hard to get buy-in from a client to pay for them, which they cost a lot, and then dedicate their own resource to them, because it requires a lot of senior stakeholders to get involved in it, and they will be very skeptical as well, because they're paying for it, and so unless it's done very well, they will be reluctant to do it again. But it can only be done very well if, of course, you practice it several times and you find out the kinks. So it's a hard one, but doing internally, I think it gets a lot more traction. And hey, it's why it's a Google design sprint. Google came up with it. You know, they're in-house, simple as that. It's not like you've got Wolf Olins or, you know, any other major Saatchi coming up with it. It's an internal procedure. It works very well for those internal companies.
Giles, you seemed a bit surprised that he used the triple diamond there. What kind of methodology do you tend to use? Is it the double diamond?
I was just joking. I was in triple diamond before. No, I've never seen it put that way. That's all. But, no, obviously the traditional method is a double diamond in terms of design processes. It was a bit tongue-in-cheek. I pulled it up, but no. What I wanted to emphasise was that when he'd broken it down to 3 sections. The final 2 of those sections are split into 2 halves, which is kind of the doing. The first section, that was 1/3 of it, was all about understanding, and I can't stress enough how important that is. And I bang on about this a lot. I know I do, but you cannot design a solution until you understand what the problem is and what you're designing for and what the constraints are, and you will find yourself being a pain to people, and you'll find yourself asking questions you don't want to ask because you think these should have already been asked, but you haven't got the answers in front of you. So you have to ask those questions, because unless you understand what you're designing for, you're going to sit there designing the wrong things. You're going to look at a screen that's going to take you 2 weeks to find a solution that really should take you 2 days, you know, and that's really important. And it's one thing out of all of this that I can stress to any of you is to, before you start designing, understand what you're designing for, understand what your market is, understand what the premises are, because otherwise it's just going to be a complete waste of your time. And it's going to eat into budget, and it's going to demoralize you, because you're going to present something to a project owner. So you might have been working, let's say you've been working alongside a project owner or a project manager or whoever, or a technical team lead, and you've been answering a question, you're providing solutions, and then it gets put to a hierarchy higher than you, and you present it, and within 5 minutes they pick a hole in it that undermines your entire presentation, because you haven't asked the right questions, because you haven't understood stuff. I've been there, and it's horrific, but it's valuable learning. But yeah, it's important to understand stuff, and that's why I was mainly trying to pull that up on Paul and emphasise that a third, it was a good diagram. A third of any project is understanding.
I had a question.
Yeah.
How do you, like in the discovery phase, how do you better identify like the context which your users are in? Like, is there some sort of guide? I've seen like people use like the AEIOU, like they look at the environment, they look at the people that they are interacting with. Are there different guides that you guys use to try to encompass all the context that you need to get more information about a user group?
Yeah, well, I mean, very often it comes down to budget, it comes down to time, it comes down to resources, it comes down to anything in a project. Generally, we would, from an agency side, you would get as much as you possibly can from your client, and and find out as much as they can. Sometimes they won't have any information whatsoever. So from that point of view, there is 2 routes. One route is, well, you need to, as a client, you need to get in touch with some of your customers and find and arrange some user interviews, however that may take place. You might be some simple phone calls, it could be going to meet people, whatever it could be. Or you just say to your client, right, let's have a meeting, and you put on your table everything you know about your customers. And we will say, well, this is everything we know about the industry. And you'll, between yourselves, come up with the best solution possible in terms of, what is the expression? How, why, what, when, and where sort of thing, and you'll just basically use that and go, well, this is our basic framework that we know about people. But of course, then the premise is you produce fast and fail fast. And you go as fast as you can, whether it's prototyping, whether it's very, very rough A/B testing using tools like Optimizely or Monitate or whatever it is, and then you just find out as much as you can. But in an ideal world, you would have, you would make a case for what's needed here is robust user research, and you would there's like as Paul alluded to, there are a myriad of companies out there that can undertake that on your behalf, and then you will validate the research, and you'll put that and you get some, and you'll present that back, and then that can kick you off with the designs, and then you can start doing some designs based on research that you might not have previously had. And then you can start testing that against genuine users and genuine customers of that client. So you might say to them, go out and get me, 50 clients or whatever, and they might give them 50 quid or a 20 quid Amazon voucher or whatever they might do. And then we'll find those people, and then you can test it with real people. There's a vast ways that you can do that sort of thing.
Thank you. Yeah, I like that. Who, what, when, where, why.
Yeah, that's a big thing. That's a big thing. Who's using it? What are they doing? When are they using it? Why are they using it? Where are they? All those things. People use it, especially what's it? Slow low mo or something. Something location. I won't lie, bollocks. Just go to who, what, why, when, why, and use that. That's much easier because it makes a lot more sense, and you can all of a sudden validate the position someone's using stuff in, and you can get a much easier thing. But yeah. But there's also so many tools out there you can use, so many that don't require vast expenses anymore. And if worse comes available, just go down to the local bloody train station and just guerrilla research people. You might piss people off, but who cares?
Keeping your distance, of course.
Of course, Lord. Yeah, of course. In Birmingham New Street, keep your distance there, mate.
Oh, it's very well, there's not a lot of people there at the minute.
No, there's not actually. Right,
I think there's more police there than there is anything else.
That's not a shock. Birmingham. Okay. Anyone else got any more questions at all?
From what point of view do you actually run the design sprints? Is it sort of from a mixture of a point of view where people have gone, oh, we've heard back from these users and they're really sort of struggling to use this part of the TalkTalk website, and they're just saying, this needs some work. Or also on the flip side, marketing want to run a new campaign and want to run it past you, see if it's feasible kind of thing?
It's a good question, and both your answers are completely valid, Crystal. And it comes down to what the business deem as to being important aspects. One business might have released a product that they might have been convinced is working, going to be brilliantly. All right, cheers, Miles. And they will, and it might completely and utterly be disastrous. They might want to find out what's going wrong. Whereas someone else might go, this is a great idea we've got, and it might be a particularly quiet part of the year. Some companies operate cyclical. Some might have a code freeze around Christmas. Some might have opportunity to, just roll with the products they've got and the options they've got, and they might go, well, people are sitting there twiddling their thumbs. Let's look how can we improve our service in the new year? And what effectively you'll have in any company is a lot of project owners, a lot of different departmental heads coming in and all wanting some sort of an idea that they want to take to market in some way, shape or form, because they themselves have people to report to, and if they perform well as head of their department, they will progress, etc., etc. And if you are sitting there as a UX resource that can operate and facilitate these kind of effective sprint methodologies that on the face of it only requires a week's worth of work to bring something to life, that's a very valuable resource in any company. So to answer your question, it can be any situation, really, any situation, as long as the company has got the, I suppose, underlying capital to write off the cost of it, and if as long as everyone who wants to be involved can create a decent business case for it, then it's got absolutely validity for everyone to do.
So it's not necessarily that you have to sort of, in this case, be an advocate for the user. If you were sort of coming from the marketing side and say, they want to run the campaign.
Well, I think if anyone wants to employ a UX or CX department to run a design sprint, then they have to accept that you are going to be giving them a user-centric experience based on a business key performance indicator, a KPI, that's going to help the bottom line of a business. Otherwise, they just go to sales and roll out a load of old bullshit that would just be nonsense. You know, what you want for our role is to run a good sprint that will put the user at the heart of the output. It's as simple as that. So if any department genuinely wants to put the user at the heart of the output, and they come to us. If they don't, it might go to sales. It's as simple as that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. It was just, one of those things where, we're actually talking to real people now. It's not all sort of textbook learning. So it's great to sort of actually speak to people who's actually in the industry and, getting more of a feel for how it actually is rather than, like I said, just textbook.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's the very reason why I started this group is because you can be overwhelmed by the stuff you learn out there. I could sit there and everyone could read this book and they go, "Oh, great, sprint! I'm a sprint. I want to do sprint. I want to sprint." And they go into a company and go, "Yeah, there's no chance of that happening, mate." And it's like, "Oh, okay," because there are very real constraints around these sort of things. So it's a good point. Real life is, and again, I'll say it again, it's why you have to absorb as much as you possibly can. Try and get it into some sort of real world context as quickly as possible, and then work out what's possible and what's not possible. Then you can find your own voice and you can find what you stand for, because you know what can happen, what can't happen, and you know what you can make happen and what you can't make happen. That's the important thing. So yeah, that's what I would advise.
When you mentioned the double diamond, that your work uses that structure,
yeah,
and they use sprints, do those work together in your company, or is it just separate?
I think the double diamond is more of a philosophy. The whole idea of just fundamentally, it's constantly testing and refining and constantly testing and refining. And that, whether it's a double diamond, whether you call it common sense, it's just what it is. But it's important to have a recognized philosophy that you can point to and go, "This is what the industry says," because when you have to get everyone else's buy-in, then they get it, and the diagrammatic visualization is already there, and they go, "Oh, yeah, I get that now," rather than you trying to come up with something. So I think that double diamond is more of a common sense philosophy that's important to be to be pointed to. But the design sprint itself is more of a, okay, this is our philosophy, this is how we actually do things. And I'm starting to, in terms of the company I work for, I'm starting to introduce service blueprinting, which I'm a big fan of as well, because that, in my opinion, looks at the service of a company as a whole and then sees where, as digital designers, we can affect change. And if we affect change here, it affects it over here. And that's really, really important, because if we affect it here, then we take out this whole section of nonsense here, which saves on development time, which saves on usability confusion, which saves on conversion, all these sort of things. So yeah, I would say something like a double diamonds philosophy, but something like a design sprint is actually actioning that philosophy.
Actually, I don't know if about anybody else, but I've not particularly done an awful lot of like service blueprinting, so possibly a topic for another presentation.
I think it is. Yeah, I think it is. There's some resources in the resource channel on Slack that has got a couple of PDFs you can download, adaptive paths to service blueprinting that I posted a long time ago. So if you go into the Slack channel and have a scroll around, you can find them and download them, have a look at those. But I absolutely can do a session on that, or I could probably even try and get someone in who's a lot better than me to do that. Someone I know already that I can think off the top of my head, if they've got time, they can come in and they can explain a bit of it to you as well, which would be better than hearing me bang on about it.
It'd be great to have a service design guest.
Yes.
Someone who works specifically in that role.
Definitely. And I will make a note of that. And here's my pen. Here's my piece of paper. Give me 5 seconds while I write that down to prove I'm doing it. Service design guest, and I'll put Lacey's name down by it. Okay, brilliant. I will make that one of my next appointments to invite to speak to. I might even go to LinkedIn and just say he wants to talk to us on service design. So if I don't get any traction, so beware of that.
I have a connection with the guy that runs the service design show. Do you want me to reach out to him?
Absolutely, Lacey. Give it a nudge. Why not?
He's in Europe. I don't know how the time difference is between where he is and where you are, but I can reach out.
It's about an hour. That's not too tricky. Not too tricky. So I'm mindful it's 9:15 now. I don't want to go on too much longer than this. One thing I'd like to point out today is we have had Lauren and Maury join us as their first week. So I'd like to say welcome to the group, guys, and it's lovely to have you here. I hope you found the session interesting and useful. Oh, Lauren, you're on mute.
Hear me now?
Yep, hear you now. Yep.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, I was just saying thank you so much for letting me join. That was really, really interesting. I come from a research background, so I'm totally new to design, so things like this are really, really helpful. So yeah, no, it's great.
Brilliant. And Amora, it's nice to see you. Must be, well, what's the time there now? It's quite early, isn't it? It's a bit earlier than here, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 4. I'm tired though. I stayed up pretty late last night. So.
Fair enough. But it's been nice to have you guys here. And,
I really enjoyed this session.
This sort of thing is give you a couple of weeks, see if you feel like it's something you want to be part of, and then we'll invite you to the Slack group, and then you can be part of that. The danger is if we start inviting everyone to a Slack group, then before I know it, it's populated with people who they should then drop off. And I want everyone in the Slack group to be involved and contribute. So that'd be great. So yeah, we'll do another thing next week. If everyone's okay, it'd be nice to try and do it next Wednesday. I asked that only because Ollie can't make next Tuesday. He just asked me specifically if we could all make Wednesday instead, and I said, well, I'll put it to the group, so hopefully we can. Normally, Lauren and Imoy, we normally meet on Tuesdays, but hopefully everyone seems to be nodding, which is great. So we'll try and do it next Wednesday. I've got another couple of people that are interested in presenting, but I want to stagger it and make sure that we're not using every session up on presenters. And now and again, people do ask me questions throughout the week, which often encompass a common theme. And so sometimes that common theme, I think, well, if 4 people have spoke to me about, for example, doing about portfolios, let's say, well, let's do a session on portfolios, because that does tend to help as well. But other than that, we can do sessions on. God, we're still recording. I didn't realise that. Otherwise, we can do sessions on anything. So yeah. So what we'll do, we'll meet up again next Wednesday, 8 p.m. I'd like you all to join if possible, and if you can't, once again, no issues whatsoever. Just let me know. There's nothing tying you into it. It's more about we're not sitting there waiting for someone to join. That's all. So I just know who's coming, who's not, so we can start the session as fast as possible. Other than that, thank you again all for attending, and I'll see you all next week. And if anyone, again, there's a couple of people I need to catch up with me actually during the next few days, so I'll be in touch with you. You've messaged me. They've been acknowledged. I just haven't really got around to responding. And if anyone else has got anything they want to discuss with me, please get in touch. Or, as ever, I encourage you to speak to each other. Okay?
Thank you so much.
Right. All right then, everyone. You take care, and I'll speak to you next week.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.